Much of President Trump's campaign strategy relies on a need to create a false reality, that mail-in voter fraud is rampant, he says, or that the ballots counted after Election Day are phony, or that coronavirus case counts and rising deaths and hospitalizations are fake. The doctors are making it up so they can get more money. The U.S. is just fine. It's rounding the turn, as the president says. Therefore, as we noted earlier, the administration can cite as an accomplishment ending the COVID-19 pandemic, which they haven't. Also, the vaccines will be here in weeks, or if not weeks, then by year's end. It's all part of the intentional deception familiar to my next guest, who grew up in the Soviet Union, and says this is how immoral leaders in other countries seek to undermine democratic institutions, by slowly chipping away at reality and promoting those around them willing to believe his version of it. Perspective now from former world chess champion Garry Kasparov, a Russian pro-democracy leader and chairman of the Human Rights Foundation. Garry, one of the things I've heard you say recently is I thought it was so interesting and important, and it's similar to something Tom Friedman had said to me a while ago, but that one of the things you said is that we've learned over the last 4 years that just how much of our democracy is not enshrined in laws, written laws. It's based on honor. It's based on tradition, what Tom Friedman described as being norms. And I think that's such an important thing to think about, because the honor, the traditions, that is what is being subverted, even if the Constitution itself is not being upended.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I don't buy arguments as recently used by Trump and his GOP enablers that it's not unconstitutional when they talk, for instance, about the recent appointment in Supreme Court. Because many things, are not unconstitutional because they're simply not mentioned there. But that's why we're talking not about the letter of the law, but also about the spirit of the law, and also about norms and traditions. And I warned about Trump's gradually removing them from his way back in 2016, because that's what's typically done. It's not, a coup overnight. It's a slow motion process of destroying checks and balances. And as you can see, Trump removed all the people that were loyal to the state, to Constitution, to American democracy, and he replaced them with enablers. And that's why you look at the Trump's White House and his supporters in other branches of government, and they loyal to Trump more than they're loyal to American Constitution and to the very base of American democracy that with presidents, Democrats, Republicans over 200 plus years stayed intact.
And it's one of the things that I think is so interesting about what you're saying is that it's not overnight there are armored personnel carriers surrounding the White House and moving in on television stations, as happens in some places when there's a coup, but that democracy can die in a much longer, tiny baby steps, that at the time, good people who are legislators go along with small, tiny steps thinking, okay, well, you give a politician this and then they'll stop. And then it's only once you've kind of gone down the road and done a bunch of little baby steps that you suddenly turn around and realize, wait a minute, we're in a whole different place.
Absolutely. And that's why I believe these elections are so important. It's probably one of the most important elections in American history, because it's not just about Trump or Biden. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about the way the government is functions and the way that the power is being transferred from one president to another if incumbent loses elections. And it seems to me that Trump is determined to use every trick in the book, and even to go beyond that, to stay in power at any cost. And it's quite unfortunate that many of his supporters in GOP, who probably had reservations about Trump's behavior, they turned into his enablers. And if in 2016 Trump's election confirmed his political style, his re-election will confirm his political practices.
One other thing you said before we go is, I wrote it down because I thought it was a great line. You said, I don't know much about chess, but I understood what you were saying. You said, saving your king from being mated in two doesn't mean that you win the game. That basically it's a long game. That this is not just about voting in this election.
No, but yes, but let's remember, saving your king from the Maiden II is a top priority. So that's why winning elections this time. So for Biden being elected is a number one priority, because if this game is lost, then it's the consequences. You know, I think it's very hard to imagine. But even if Biden is elected and if Democrats flip the Senate, it's just the beginning of the long road, because Trump could be defeated, but Trumpism, the idea that you can turn the corners and you can bend the law at your convenience using every loophole that you can find in the books, will be very much alive. Trump's success will enable more Trumps, whether from the right or from the left, to repeat this experiment. And we should be aware that, you know, new Trumps will be coming, and they will be younger, they will be more dynamic, more intelligent, not obese, and younger, and not corrupt. And it's very important that that's after November 4th. Hopefully, the results will be already announced. So we'll work hard, and that's what I believe RDI, our organization, Democracy Initiative, will be doing. It's to start building the new firewalls against potential Trumpism revival.
Garry Kasparov, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Trump has one more stop to make before he finishes his campaign day. He'll hold a rally in Omaha, Nebraska. There's a live shot of the crowd right now. There is exactly one presidential delegate at stake in Omaha. The question you're likely to ask is, well, why is he going there? We'll explain ahead.